Every Naruto fan knows the story of Jiraiya the Gallant, the famed sage of the legendary Sannin, who would make himself one of the Hidden Leaf Village's most important shinobi, despite the fact that he spent many years away from the village. However, just how different would the Naruto story be if Jiraiya had never left the Hidden Leaf Village? How would the Naruto story change? Would things end up for better, or would they end up for worse? Well, in today's edition of Naruto What If, we're going to look at just that. In order for this to happen, we must first establish a trigger point, a fixed point in the timeline where one change could alter the timeline itself and establish a new branch to the Naruto timeline. Given Jiraiya has left the village a few different times, I've narrowed it down to two realistic points. The first is when Jiraiya chose to stay behind in the Rain Village in order to train the war orphans, and the second time being when Jiraiya left the village following the pursuit of Orochimaru and subsequently gathering intel for Konoha from the shadows. In my opinion, the easiest choice would be when Jiraiya met with the Rain Village orphans during the Second Great Ninja War. In this timeline, when Yahiko approaches Jiraiya in the Sannin, instead of Jiraiya agreeing to stay behind and train them for long enough for them to care for themselves, Jiraiya would prevent Orochimaru from killing the group and would instead leave with Orochimaru and Tsunade. This immediately causes major changes to the timeline. Without Jiraiya there to protect them, the three orphans don't last nearly as long as they did in the original timeline. While it's possible that Nagato unlocks Madara's Rinnegan when Yahiko's life is threatened, without having proper shinobi there to train them, they'd eventually find themselves being added to the bodies of shinobi and innocent people who died during the Second Ninja War. This means that the first version of the akatsuki was never formed, and Hanzo ends up staying in power in the village hidden in the rain. Meanwhile, Zetsu, at the orders of Madara, goes back to the Rain Village to grab the Rinnegan out of Nagato's corpse. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, with Jiraiya staying inside the Hidden Leaf Village, there are things that remain the same. The 3 years that Jiraiya spent training the war orphans would result in Jiraiya being inside of Konoha, which means that Jiraiya likely is able to prevent Tsunade from leaving the village, as she did in the time after the Second Ninja War but before the start of the Third Ninja War, which means that Konoha retains one of its top medics, and with Jiraiya's help, it's possible that Tsunade's Sphere of Blood is also addressed, though that isn't a guarantee. Also, as Orochimaru began kidnapping children to experiment on them, with Danzo running interference for him, Jiraiya would likely begin to catch on to things, and given Minato would still be a student during this time, there's a good chance that Jiraiya begins to collect the evidence that Orochimaru is the one behind the children and the older shinobi going missing, which would be a full decade sooner than Orochimaru originally got caught in the original timeline, since Orochimaru didn't get chased out of Konoha until after Kabuto was old enough to be betrayed by Root, which happens a few years after Minato's death in the original timeline. In this version of the timeline, Jiraiya having enough evidence that Orochimaru is behind the kidnappings of young children like Yamato, it's very likely that the third Hokage, who would be much younger in this timeline, is more willing to go through stopping Orochimaru. A team of a teenage Minato, Jiraiya, and Hiruzen would be more than enough to stop Orochimaru in this timeline. Given the third Hokage would still be in his late 40s by this point in the story, Orochimaru will be battling a fellow Sannin in Jiraiya, a prodigy in Minato, and the unicorn known as Prime Hiruzen, who is stated in the manga to be the strongest Hokage in the history of the village. Orochimaru would be defeated, and if he weren't killed in battle, he'd be placed in prison and the key would be thrown away. Given that Jiraiya would have proof of Orochimaru's wrongdoings, there would also be enough to hold Danzo accountable for his actions as well, and once Hiruzen gets face to face with Danzo, it's likely Danzo is arrested as well, assuming he doesn't flee when he learns that Orochimaru has been discovered. Danzo and Orochimaru being in ninja jail changes a lot for the timeline. This means that Danzo's root organization is disbanded, and Orochimaru never gets to kidnap shinobi like Suigetsu and Karin, which means that Suigetsu remains a prodigy of the Hidden Mist Village and Karin remains a Hidden Grass shinobi. The Sound Village is also never established, and by the time that Sai is born, he's never placed into the foundation, which means he grows up with a healthy, normal personality. Most importantly, the third Hokage would never die at the hands of Orochimaru. However, one thing that doesn't change is that Minato would still lead his team on the mission that will result in Obito being crushed by the boulders and Kakashi becoming known as Kakashi of the Sharingan. Madara would still corrupt Obito's mind after Rin died, but where things get interesting is Madara's Rinnegan. Does Madara give Obito the Rinnegan after teaching him through Genjutsu like we saw in the original timeline? Not everyone can handle the Rinnegan, and Madara wouldn't have a puppet in Nagato to use in this timeline, so he would have to look at Obito. The only issue with that is that a much older and stronger Obito set admitted himself during the Fourth Ninja War that he could barely handle one Rinnegan and stated that it nearly drove him crazy due to the overwhelming chakra of the Rinnegan when he was speaking to Sakura. It's for that reason that I believe that Obito would not be able to handle the Rinnegan if it were to be transplanted into him, and instead I think once it became clear that Obito couldn't use it without losing himself, that Zetsu would hold on to the eye, thinking to try again once Obito got stronger. I still believe that Obito will still pop up inside of Konoha on the anniversary of Ren's death and on the night of Naruto's birth. But here's where our next major change occurs. Originally, there were Anbu placed outside of the barrier where Kushina was giving birth, and Obito was shown killing them before he killed the wife of the third Hokage and placed paper bombs onto a baby Naruto so he could capture Kushina. However, in this timeline, Jiraiya would be there, and I strongly believe that Jiraiya would be standing next to Obito because Jiraiya would still be Naruto's godfather and want to be there for the birth of his godson. This means that when Obito tries to work his trickery, he runs into a problem because of the duo of Jiraiya and Minato is enough to prevent Obito from being able to make off with Kushina or even place the paper bombs onto baby Naruto, and with Jiraiya there to buy an extra few seconds that Minato needs, Minato's able to repair the seal on Kushina. The battle that ensues afterwards will see a 14-year-old Obito, even with this hacks using Kamui, getting worked by the duo of Minato and Jiraiya. Because the Nine Tails has not been unsealed, this means that Minato's able to focus all of his energy on it taking down Obito. There's no wasting chakra using the flying Raijin guiding thunder to teleport away a Nine Tails Bijudama, or wasting chakra to summon Gamabunta to hold down the Nine Tails. Minato will be able to focus solely on Obito without being distracted about worrying about the Hidden Leaf Village, which means he likely figures out Obito's Kamui even faster than he did in the original timeline. The duo of Minato and Jiraiya working together would be more than enough to do major damage to Obito, and because Minato would have marked Obito at some point during the battle, since he doesn't know the masked man is Obito and that Obito already has a marker on him, the moment that Minato or Jiraiya lands a giant Rasengan on Obito and leaves him doing the woozy woozy dance from getting hit so hard that he retreats, Minato would grab Jiraiya and teleport after Obito, because in this timeline he could actually pursue him since this timeline's different. There's no worrying about protecting the village from the Nine Tails, and his infant child is in the care of his mother Kushina, who is more than a capable enough shinobi of her own right. The moment that Obito appears back at his hideout where Zetsu is, Minato and Jiraiya would appear seconds later, and a shocked Obito would eat a giant Rasengan from Minato or Jiraiya right to the face, taking him out immediately, while the other shinobi who doesn't attack Obito takes down Zetsu and kills him, which isn't that much of a stretch given that Zetsu isn't much of a fighter. Upon seeing that the mask of the masked man's been shattered and realizing the face he was looking down at was Obito, Minato would be shattered, leaving Jiraiya to console his former student Minato as Minato carried the unconscious and half-dead body of Obito back to Konoha. With Zetsu dead and Obito locked away in a cell waiting to be interrogated, this changes the timeline even further. The first major change is that the Nine Tails attack would never happen, which means that the village is never destroyed, and the hatred manufactured towards the Uchiha clan isn't created. Though the elders would question if anyone in the Uchiha clan knew about Obito's survival, Minato and Kushina would still be alive, which means that Naruto wouldn't grow up as an orphan in this timeline, but instead would be raised by his parents, like we saw in Naruto Shippuden Movie 6, Naruto Shippuden Road to the Ninja. Zetsu being dead also means that there will be nobody to retrieve the Rinnegan eyes that belonged to Madara that Zetsu would have had hidden while he was searching for another person to use as a pawn in his scheme to revive Kaguya. When Obito does regain consciousness, covered up in ceiling tags that prevent him from using his Sharingan, similar to what we saw with Sasuke after the Fourth Ninja War, Minato's suffering be rivaled by only that of Kakashi's, who would be there when Obito's questioned by Minato, and upon hearing Obito scream, "It's because you let Rin die," the duo of Minato and Kakashi would have severe mental anguish as a result. From here, there are more major changes to the timeline that occur. With Danzo in Ninja Jail, there will be no Nine Tails attack, even with the reveal of Obito being the one who attempted to take the Nine Tails and attack the village. There would be no turn against the Uchiha clan. This means by extension the tensions that were raised between the Uchiha clan members to the point of trying to pull off a coup d'etat wouldn't be nearly as hot in this timeline. While the Uchiha were never fond of Minato being named the fourth Hokage, despite Fugaku and anime filler being on top of the rooftop for a ceremony as a part of the Jonin Council, the way that Minato handles Obito and not putting him to death for his crimes would be enough to could keep the temperatures lowered and give Minato time to win over the Uchiha, which given that Kushina was friends with Mikoto, Minato has a good chance of winning the respect and the acknowledgement of Fugaku by extension, despite us knowing that Fugaku wasn't a huge fan of Minato via the Itachi story of Daylight. I do believe that with Minato being alive, he'll be able to help Kakashi through the slump that Kakashi will find himself in, but I do still believe that Kakashi will be extremely strict when getting assigned academy graduates and failing them until he finds the right team. Danzo being in jail during this time means that Kabuto would never be pushed into working for Root, and his adopted mother wouldn't be brought back into the ninja life, which means that Kabuto would grow up with the normal life in the orphanage. Obito being locked away also means that Yagura wouldn't become the tyrant that the Hidden Mist Village knew about, meaning there will be no Blood Mist Village, and Zabuza would never kill the academy students or eventually become a shinobi who tried to kill the Mizukage. Meanwhile, the Uchiha clan would thrive with Fugaku and Shisui both in possession of the Mangekyo Sharingan, and Konoha and the Uchiha building a solid foundation due to Minato winning over Fugaku means that any village who crosses Konoha has a major problem. Naruto would grow up very similar to Boruto, having both of his parents at his home but also having access to incredible teachers. Jiraiya would dote on Naruto and teach him overpowered jutsu. Kushina would also likely teach him sealing jutsu of the Uzumaki clan, and elite trainers like Ebisu would eventually train Naruto, putting him well above the other students in his class, similar to how Boruto was already well above a Chunin level in terms of skill and power by the time he finished the academy. Though Naruto wouldn't be a jinchuuriki in this timeline, Naruto would still be exceptionally powerful, and due to not having Kurama mess with his chakra control would be a lot more skilled in this timeline, which in turn makes the rivalry with Sasuke a lot more interesting. One being the son of the village's Hokage and the other being the son of a clan leader of one of the four noble clans of the village. Expectations for both would be rather high, and due to their parents being on good terms, it's very possible that both get annoyed with each other, but due to Naruto being more skilled in this timeline and not a talentless idiot who scored at the very bottom of his class, Naruto and Sasuke would not end up on the same team when they became Genin, but due to the Ashra and Indra effect, there would still be a healthy rivalry. Shinobi like Sasori would still go on to become rogue ninja, but with no Zetsu there to pull the strings through Obito to have the Akatsuki form, and there would be no collection of high-level S-rank ninja working together to capture the tailed beast. By the time that Itachi displays any signs of the illness that robbed him of his prime, it's very likely that the resident medical wonder genius Tsunade is able to find a cure for the disease, which means that Konoha would also have a healthy Itachi who will be on pace to become the first Uchiha to ever be named Hokage, and due to Shisui not dying unless someone close to him died in front of Itachi or he experienced enough trauma to awaken the Mangekyo, Itachi in this timeline would never have the Mangekyo but would still be exceptionally powerful, being the third strongest in his clan behind Shisui and his father, but eventually surpassing both of them. Ultimately, the cycle of hatred would come down to if Naruto and Sasuke are able to fully break that cycle on their own, and I do believe that this timeline sets the stage for that possibility to occur, especially with no outside forces like Danzo or Zetsu to manipulate the hands of fate to set the stage for Kaguya to return, since in this timeline, all the paths towards a revival would be nailed shut. That's why I'll leave this off to you guys. Do you guys think that Naruto and Sasuke could break the cycle of hatred in this timeline? While you think that over, click here to watch these other Naruto Explained What Ifs.